And good morning, everybody. We are live. Congratulations. You made it through the week. Another amazing week of food safety, food quality, making sure that all the food that we all enjoy and love out there is wholesome, awesome, and of course, safe. And doing what we do in food safety and food quality, nobody notices because if we do a good job, that's expected. But Shawn and I, we know you're out there. We know you're doing a good job and we appreciate it all. And we say, thank you. Awesome. That was awesome time. That was perfect. We couldn't have planned that better. So thanks everybody. Welcome for joining us on the Food Safety Chat. If you're new, my name is Bryan Armentrout. I'm with the Food Leadership Group. And every Friday at this time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern, we live stream on LinkedIn and YouTube. And I have the distinct pleasure of bringing an amazing food safety expert onto the chat. And unless you live under a rock, you already know who my next guest is on the chat here this week, and that's Shawn Stevens, the founder of Food Industry Council. How are you doing today, sir?
Fabulous. Happy Friday. I hope you are fabulous as well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Bryan.
Doing well. I mean, it's we have a couple of really nice maples in our yard. I posted some pictures online. Just as
Nice.
gorgeous red, and it doesn't last too long here in Colorado. And then you've got all the giant leaves to break up, and you're hoping that a nice big wind comes along and makes it your neighbor's problem, but generally doesn't happen. Plus, you get the leaves from the guy upstream anyway.
Like dandelions in the spring.
Exactly. Hi, Bonna. Shawn, good to see you. Ryan, good to see you as well, my friend. So, Shawn in Belmont, nice. When I worked for Lactalis, I don't know if it's the same Belmont, but we had a plant in Wisconsin where the President Brie and feta are made. Little town, kind of in the Southwest. Joseph in Lubbock, nice town as well.
Cool.
So we were chatting a little bit here before getting on. So of course, Halloween's coming up very quickly next week. A little interesting fact around that as well. It's weird how this worked out. Is October 31st, 5 years ago, was the first episode of the Food Safety Chat, episode number 1.
Wow.
And we're now on episode 247 this week.
That's
Isn't that
impressive.
Crazy.
That is
People are still
impressive.
listening to me. I don't know why, but they still do. Cheryl, Paul, Ryan. Oh, take advantage of the foliage. Absolutely. So we were talking a little bit too down in Florida, like some fun stuff's going on down there. You were talking about maybe planning a big boat trip coming up here in the future, which sounds super cool.
Yes, for sure. Making the jump from Fort Lauderdale out to the Bahamas might be really cool. Something definitely a bucket list item. So we were actually planning on, Jess and I, going to the British Virgin Islands for our 10th year anniversary. And
nice.
maybe
Congratulations.
drive our own boat to the Bahamas and try that for once.
Very cool.
So yeah, got to find time for, in this business, as you know, Bryan, there's a lot of, there's never a dull moment. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of challenges that we face constantly every single day. And absolutely have to try to plan a little bit of relaxation time if you can squeeze it in every once in a while.
Yep. If you let it, it can consume you. So you have to remember, don't burn out. We need everybody here.
Right.
Don't burn out.
That's right.
And so part of this as well, too, one of the things I'm really excited about, and you'll see up here in the header now, is sponsor. So Culture Advisory Group. So Paul Valder, who's on the chat here, is the CEO over there. I'll put their website link here at the end. They do some amazing work. They have an affiliation with, as well, a laboratory, Purity IQ, that does a lot of the testing out there to make sure you're buying what you're actually buying. We're seeing a lot more fraud in that area out there as well.
Yep.
So it's important. It's that old saying, was it trust but verify?
Yes, indeed. Very cool.
Absolutely. So with that, everybody, please join us for a drink of your favorite beverage. Cheers.
So I see Paul mentioned BVI. If you get a chance, visit. You've probably been to Soggy Dollar for sure. And definitely, if you have a chance, visit Scrub Island, which is perfect, and Oil Nut Bay. Those are the definitely check the box locations.
I'm jealous. You guys got some insider knowledge here for sure. So one of the things, Shawn, that I like doing and torturing people with is the dad joke. Are you ready for the dad joke?
I'm ready.
And what's fun about this dad joke, guys, is do this on your significant other. I totally trolled my wife on this one when I was getting her for the chat. It's like, the fish thing. I reeled her in on this one. So out here in Colorado, Shawn, you may not have seen it on your local news, but out here in Colorado, there was an issue, and there was a small little boy. He's like maybe 3 years old, and he got into his mother's purse, and before she could intervene, ate some coins. And of course, the concerned mother that she was immediately threw him in the car, raced to the emergency room. The doctors put him on the table, did all kinds of investigation, x-rays and everything else. Last I heard, though, I think he's going to be okay, but there's still no change.
That's good. My daughter would be rolling her eyes for sure.
And that's the joy of it. That is the joy of the dad joke, is bringing cringe to the lives of our fellow man.
Especially, well, it's actually well welcomed on a Friday for sure. That's you can all smile and laugh, and it'll be a good weekend.
Definitely. So one of the things that we started off here on the chat as well, Shawn, is that you're everywhere. I mean, you're a sought after speaker for conferences. You're always out there. I love, if people aren't familiar, you need to check this out at Food Industry Council, and it's COUNSEL, like a lawyer.com. A couple of things is Shawn has, and he does this on his own, at his own expense, is he has the best, I use this all the time, tool for looking at recalls. You can go in there and you can sort recalls by FDA, USDA, type of recall, recency, different years. It's an amazing tool, Shawn. So I wanted to publicly, again, thank you for doing that, because that is super helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, we started that about 10 years ago as a tool for the industry, and as in my role as a lawyer, in your role as a close partner and advisor for the food industry, we felt it was important to be able to speak intelligently about kind of what's going on, the recalls and the reasons why products are being pulled off the shelves, and some of the challenges that we face as industry. So in the absence of any single data set where you could literally search anything that you wanted to know about recalls that have happened in the last 25 years here in the United States on the USDA and FDA side, we thought it would be really great to pull all of that data together. And it was a huge effort, but we're very proud to offer that to the industry. And yes, has proven to be a really, really great tool. And it's really great when we're looking for, we have a recall of our own, and we want to create some precedents and tell FDA that this needs to be a class 2 versus a class 1. We can do that because we can do a quick search or vet our suppliers or see what kind of hazards are associated with commodities. So thanks for the plug. I appreciate it. And we're very proud to offer that up to the industry.
It's an amazing tool, and we're all in this together. And food safety doesn't care that the government is shut down. This website keeps going, and we have those resources out there where we can keep track of this stuff. So I just put the link in there as well.
Awesome.
Another really cool thing that you do, and I think this is kind of what I'm doing. We'll talk more about risk assessment and these type of things as we go through the conversation here today. But your mock food trials are amazing, because, and I think one of the key things with this is a lot of times what we do in our space is it's very abstract concepts. And anytime you can bring it down to a concrete example and show people outside of what we do how these things work, that's awesome. And your tool of having these mock trials is an amazing way of doing that. So before we kind of get into our topic today, let's give everybody kind of a little taste of how those things work.
Yeah. So in 2014, the DOJ announced very publicly with FDA that they would look very closely if there was a recall and outbreak where consumers became sick from eating a contaminated food product, and they would look to see whether there was a basis for criminal charges to be brought against the companies. In years past, when PulseNet first came online, and for the first time ever, we started to see outbreaks and we're able to track with our surveillance. And to a certain extent, we were like deers in the headlight. And the agencies didn't really know what to do. And despite best efforts, right, food might become contaminated and people could become sick. And there was a regulatory response, but there really wasn't any teeth behind the enforcement actions that would follow when a food company, and again, as lawyers, we invented the term despite best efforts, produced a food product that made people sick. And in 2014, that's when the world kind of changed and DOJ said, listen, food products should not make people sick. Food companies shouldn't have outbreaks. And if they do, we're going to look and see if there's a basis for any enhanced civil or criminal penalties to be leveled against these companies. And the standards are very, very, it's easy for the government to prove that a food company or a food company executive failed to prevent an outbreak, because the elements are: number one, the company was aware of a condition that could lead to product contamination or adulteration, which one might even argue could be listeria in the environment in your routine findings, right? Number two, the company was in a position to eliminate the condition, which is to say, we've been dealing with what we think might be a persistence issue over the course of the last 18 months, because we're getting positives every 3 weeks or so. And the company's in a position to eliminate the condition. We can shut down production, stop the lines, disassemble all the equipment, do extensive clean and sanitization, and then resample. But we don't, because of our customer commitments, right? We have to keep producing product. So we're in a position to correct the situation, but we don't. And then people get sick. We fail to do so is the third element. It's very easy for the government to prove there's no intent. It's a misdemeanor charge. And for every count, every contaminated ice cream cone you ship is up to a year in prison or a $250,000 fine. So the teeth are very, very sharp. So what we did is we started doing these mock trial exercises where we would take, if we're working on behalf of a company, for instance, we create a fictional company that's very similar to the colleagues we're working with, the client we're working with. We create a fictional product very similar to what they may be producing. And we create a fact scenario that's very similar to what would happen in the sort of routine day-to-day. And then we would demonstrate, in the event that actually, contaminated product made its way out of that facility, nobody, unknowingly, but it happened, and people got sick and there was an outbreak linked back to that facility. This is what it would look like if DOJ came in, using the emails of the company, the text messages between employees, the communications back and forth, trying to use those against the company to establish criminal charges. And my colleague Jessica plays the role of the DOJ lawyer. Usually it's about 20 minutes of argument with a PowerPoint on why the company executive, the jury, which is the audience, that's the beauty of it, the audience listens to the arguments from the DOJ lawyer as to why they should find the executive vice president of food safety guilty. I will argue for 20 minutes on behalf of the defense, as a defense lawyer, as to why the DOJ is out to lunch. And then we have the audience deliberate. And what we get from that exercise is an acute awareness of how, when we're operating sort of in the day-to-day normalcy, how those things can be used against us if we're not supporting our decisions the right way and we're communicating the right way within our organization by the government in attempting to get these types of charges. And we've done this for the largest companies in the world. We've done it for the largest restaurant chains. And we have, what's been reported was a distinct change in behavior at the leadership level, because we have now another lens through which we're looking when we're making these really tough food safety decisions. And I think, Bryan, you would agree, when we think about food safety and we think about food safety culture and we think about how when our professions are over, right? When we finally retire, which we may never do, but what mark did we leave on the world? How did
Yeah.
we leave the world better, right, than when we entered it? And the work you do and this type of exercise, you roll all that together and there's a net benefit. So that's something we've been very, very, very proud of, and we love doing. I think it has had a profound impact on food safety decision making for sure.
Absolutely. And that's part of what I preach as well. And we're very much aligned around this is we need to get food safety out of the QA food safety world and up to the executives so
Yes.
they understand it. Those are the people making the decisions when it comes to the future of food safety in our companies and overall. That's where food culture lives. It's not in our group. We need to export it. Um, Curious about this. Dr. Detweiler's been talking about this a lot recently. So we had some high profile cases in this realm, Shawn, of the DOJ going after companies. So Bluebell, BCA, high profile cases where they were convicted. The CEO, Mr. Cruz with Bluebell, and again back to emails, which is a pet peeve of mine. Good luck getting companies to include emails in your document retention and destruction program. No, it's like, oh my God, my emails. Yeah, you got to do that too. Anyway, I digress. Um, Not a lot of high profile cases with that. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there are. We just don't hear about
See 'em?
them. So
Uh,
high profile for the people involved for sure. If we
yeah.
look at the most recent, last year we had a series of recalls involving ready to eat meats
Mhm.
uh, in Boar's Head. DOJ was on site within a couple weeks, and there were meetings between the corporate
Oh,
leadership lawyers and the agency. So they're in there for sure. With the change in political climate, I haven't yet gotten a sense as to whether we've dialed it back a little bit. My guess is probably not. I think probably the most stark example was uh, during President Trump's first election, going back a number of years. I think it was my birthday, October 17th, before the November election, and there was a statement on the Trump administration's or the election website that said, if I'm elected, one of the first things we're going to do is get rid of the food police. And
mm,
meaning basically, FDA and USDA and all the regulations, right, that are imposed on the food industry. And it is complex, and there's a lot that we have to deal with is in this industry. But that statement was taken down within 24 hours because, appropriately so, his advisors said, hey, listen, you cannot dial back food safety. Consumers want safe food. The public wants safe food. And as much as we want to criticize the regulators in this space, we can't. Safe food is something that everybody agrees on. And that statement was eliminated, and we never saw it again. So I don't think, from a political standpoint, I don't think there's a whole lot of debate amongst whether you're conservative or more liberal. I don't think there's really any debate about, we all want safe food. We want the regulators in there. We can argue about whether they're being a little too aggressive here and there, which we're seeing now. The trend is kind of going in that direction. But it's absolutely crucial that, we're talking about the health of a nation, which is not only important as human beings, but to our national security and everything that, is attached to it. It's critical. We can't ever let our guard down, for sure.
yeah, no, that's good. And now I didn't know that. And this is an important thing, I think, because a lot of times in food safety and quality, we butt our heads against the wall with the everything's okay. Um, that's really key information that behind the scenes, DOJ is using their stick and saying, all right, guys, you don't want us to do this, and we don't want to do it. So show us that you're actually doing something to fix this, and we won't have to. And that never makes it to the public level. So that's a really good tool for everybody here on the chat to remember, is that just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. So
And
that's really important.
yeah, and I'll add to that, Brian. Um, I'm I'm a little disappointed, but not really. Overall, my 25 years, I've been more than 25 years. I've been practicing law. and working very closely with food companies. And the most effective tool that I have found over the course of that 25 years was exactly what we're talking about here, which is when we talk to the C-suite about the consequences of failure, not only the human element, because that it's theoretical to a certain extent, unless you've actually been there, but the C-suite understands regulatory compliance. They understand if I fail to pay the taxes, if I fail to check these OSHA boxes, if I fail to make sure I'm doing the right thing from a food safety standpoint, the things you advocate, then I'm exposing not only myself but the company to this enhanced regulatory / potential criminal exposure, and that's not in my culture, right? I get it. I understand that speak. So I'm going to take the extra steps to make sure I'm investing the resources to ensure that we're doing what we have to do on a food safety standpoint, as opposed to, I think in the early days, we were sort of inclined to talk about, well, we want to do food safety because it feels good for the right reason, because we don't want to make our customers sick. Well, yeah, that's true. But the C-suite who's running, the ledger and having to make those decisions, yeah, they're a good person, but at the end of the day, there has to be that defined limit that they can judge themselves against. And that defined limit is, if you make somebody sick, DOJ is going to be crawling all over us. So let's not make people sick, right? Got it. Understood. We're going to invest the dollars. And that it's been like I said, on the one hand, it's unfortunate, but on the other hand, it is fortunate, because I think we've become better because of it.
No, I agree. So one of the things, and this conversation is highlighting this as well, and I want to make sure everybody sees this, is that an important part of what we do in food safety, and a big chunk of your role, is seeing what the trends are and looking out there and seeing how things are taking place. What's the political environment? What's FDA up to? What's USDA publishing? All these activities to kind of put together a picture. And part of our role is to forecast into the future what we need to be worried about. And part of this is, there was a few examples of some recalls that I wanted to kind of bring up here that caught our eyes, that were pretty big. And there's a common trend with these recent activities. And so I want to get your thoughts around this, Shawn. So there was a big recall with a company called FGF Brands, who makes products for Dunkin' Donuts. 2 million units recalled for LM. Prairie Farms, Listeria for EM as well, and Fresh and Ready Foods for ready-to-eat sandwiches with LM. The commonality between all three of these is the FDA found through swabathons and looking at data from those companies, environmental hits, no product. And these were gigantic recalls. So FDA is looking at recalls now from the standpoint of essentially a precautionary standpoint of, if it's in the environment, it's going to get in the product, and we're not going to wait.
Yeah. So I've been preaching that mantra for a long time, which is, if Listeria, in the old days, I think we're all guilty of it. We were inclined to say, well, yeah, we get it. Pathogens will be in the environment, but if we can control them in the environment, which is to say, keep them off of food contact surfaces or out of product, we're fine. So it's okay if we're seeing it in the drains, or if we're seeing it in the corner of the wall in the processing room. But I think the stark reality is, we can put 250,000 cells on the tip of a paperclip. Yeah. If it's in the environment, it's going to get into your product. It is. Where I struggle is, we have these examples where there is environmental contamination. There are resident strains, and this may be an entirely different chat, because it's very philosophical. But can you get rid of a strain of Listeria in a chaotic, massive factory environment? Yes or no? And there are people at FDA will say, absolutely you can, and that's the expectation. And if you don't do it, we're going to shut you down and throw a warning letter at you. And these examples that you're talking about, and you have other people, very well credentialed scientists, who say, no, if it's there, you are never going to get rid of that contaminant unless you burn the building down or nuke it, right? And build a new building, and it's going to be re-entered in the first couple of years. So I don't know, having been doing this now for almost 3 decades, I don't know what the answer is from a scientific standpoint. If you really can achieve that level of sterility and in food processing. So then is the solution, we continue to have these massive recalls and beat industry to the ground, or do we adopt an approach similar to Europe or Canada where a certain level of, for example, listeria is permissible as long as it's not out of control, right? Where the company is actually, and I have examples of clients who are doing WGS, and because of this exact issue, and they're strain typing all of their positives, and what they're basically doing is proving to the agency, those who don't have an open mind and believe that if you find the same strain year to year, you have a persistence issue and your sanitation program is out of control and you're incapable of producing a safe product, you're basically running yourself out of business. So why would the FDA want companies to even do that if what we're proving is, in some cases, you can't eliminate these strains? So it's a very philosophical question, and it's nuanced, and I think it's a level of degrees where, yes, we have to roll up our sleeves. Yes, we have to dig in. Yes, we have to put all of these resources towards eliminating these resident strains when we see them in our environment. But we also, at the same time, I think if we're honest, have to ask ourselves, can we really do it? And what is success? Is success total elimination and an environment that's as sterile as a hospital room? Or is it something a little different when we're talking about just getting safe food out to consumers at an efficient and cost-effective manner? So I don't want to make it things a little too deep this Friday morning, but those are, I think, really important questions that as we move forward, we have to ask ourselves, and we have to ask the regulators and the scientists.
It's the battle between the practical and the theoretical. It's easy to sit at CIFSAN or whatever they're called now and pontificate on what should be done based upon the books versus being in a plant in rural Wisconsin that was built in the 40s with questionable floors, and all you need is one guy with a hose, spraying down the floor in the wrong area, and it's like, wee, everything everywhere. Even what's interesting is the hospital example as well. What's that saying? If you're sick and you want to die, go to the hospital. Lots of secondary infections happen in hospitals. They can't keep hospitals clean, and you bring people into an environment where you are now introducing resistant strains of bacteria in there, and they're proliferating, and they're not quite sure what to do. I worked for the first 2 years when I got out of school, Shawn. I worked in medical device, and I worked in a clean room, and which was horrible. I had the whole bunny suit on, and I'm like, this isn't for me. But the point of the story was we would clean those things just like crazy. And we had a product that we filled in those rooms that was it was a sterilized product being filtered into the product. And every now and then we would still get a Pseudomonas contamination in those products. Despite our best efforts, it's going to happen. And any type of expectation, I think, from the academic or regulatory world that you have to be perfect all the time isn't realistic.
And I don't know what the answer is, Bryan, because I do not want to be the person who advocates that elimination isn't achievable. I don't, because I think that's what we should strive for. And when we do find listeria in the environment, it needs to be like the airport fire department, and the sirens are going off and the yellow trucks are running out to put out that fire, because it definitely is a fire. But I also want to be a realist and not paint a picture that is a goal that's completely unachievable. And a lot of companies have suffered significantly because they were doing everything they should be doing. They were trying to do the right job, and they were penalized significantly for not being able to achieve the impossible once they became under that microscope. So I don't know where the answer is, and maybe I'm planting a seed for a future discussion years from now. But I think it is an issue that we have to address, and we have to address it realistically with the regulators and everybody in between, which is to say, we can do it. We can produce a safe product, but the zero tolerance rules just aren't a good fit, I don't think, for the industry as it currently exists.
Yes, it kind of goes back to your earlier comment. This, we're working. It's a food safety is a never-ending objective. We're always going toward that next level of perfection. So with that, and companies with due diligence, and they have a recall. There's kind of a new specter that you and I were talking about on Monday that's coming up right now as well, that I think people need to be aware about, is class action, right? Class action lawsuits now, right?
Yes, as if there weren't enough lawyers already in the world or enough lawsuits. And I always apologize to people, and I'll let this audience know I don't like lawyers either. So we're all on the same side. But yes, we've seen, historically, if Bryan, you and I said, hey, we're going to produce a really cool product. It's going to be good, clean label, and we're going to call it all natural. But we have an ingredient, whether through our fault or the fault of our supplier, that is maybe a little bit synthetic. And we put all natural on the front of our package, and the plaintiff lawyers see that. They're drawn to it, and they bring a lawsuit saying, on behalf of a class of nationwide consumers, saying that your product is not in fact natural and you're misleading consumers, and they're paying a premium. They're paying more money for that product, believing that it's all natural when in fact it's not. And you're deceiving consumers, and you have to be stripped of whatever profits that you earned as a result of that marketing campaign. That is a typical class action lawsuit. What we're seeing now is when there are recalls of products, the class actions are now, or the class action lawyers are now taking that same theory and layering it on top of food products that are recalled and saying, the class of nationwide consumers went to the grocery store and they purchased this ready-to-eat food, and it was ultimately recalled for listeria. And the value of that, they believed it was listeria-free, or you didn't put a warning on the package on the PDF that said, hey, this deli product contains listeria, 100% natural listeria. And they're saying the consumers were duped because they thought they were buying basically a wholesome product, and it was adulterated, so the value of the product was $0. Yet they reached into their wallets and they paid for this, and now they have to be made whole. So we see these class action lawsuits being filed against companies that are voluntarily recalling food products, and I think it's a disturbing trend. I don't like it. When we have a recall, there are remedies that are in place. Bring the product back to the grocer and you'll get a refund, right? Bring it back to the point of purchase, you get a refund. If you get online, you issue a complaint, the company in almost every instance will send you a coupon for another, right? There's remedies. So you haven't really lost your money. And I think it weighs against public policy, which is to say, if you and I are now in the boardroom of our cool, natural, clean label product, but we learn that maybe there was a sample collected at retail, or we had an issue with our environmental monitoring program and we found a zone 1 positive after we shipped product, you and I are now having a conversation about whether we recall that product. And maybe it was just species, it wasn't even LM. And we're like, well, now we're sitting on the fence and we're like, it's going to cost us $10 million. The risk is low. It's only species. There's no LM. So the insurance company, which wrote the insurance policy only to cover class 1 or class 2 recalls, may say, well, there isn't a likelihood that consumers are going to have adverse health consequences because there's no LM here. You only found species. What do we do? Do we recall this product or not? And then you say, or I say, probably me, because I'm the lawyer, shit, if we recall this product, we're going to get hit with a class action lawsuit from a nationwide class, which is going to cost us another $3 million. Do we recall this or not? And I would, but there are others who might say, you know what? No, we're not recalling it because of the threat of the litigation that's going to follow. Let's just let's adopt the theory, which is never a good strategy, of wishful thinking, and hopefully
Yeah.
it goes away. So it cuts against public policy, which is to encourage companies to do the right thing when they think they might have an issue, which is to voluntarily recall products. So I think it's across the board. I think it's bad. And some of these larger companies have been settling these lawsuits, paying the plaintiff lawyers to go away, which is the worst strategy ever, because now you're emboldening them and you're saying, yeah, continue to bring these lawsuits against companies that voluntarily recall food products. So I'm actually really upset at some of the larger players and their lawyers who could argued and convince them to settle these lawsuits. I think is a horrible strategy.
Wow. Wow. So to reflect that back, essentially that decision-making process in the company has now been skewed to the side of taking our chances and not recalling because the risk of all of these new legal actions is so high, not to mention brand damage and all of that. So
That's an argument for sure. Yep.
yeah.
So
So really, I mean, like when you see issues like Boar's Head or things like this, and then people who are actually injured, they get listeriosis, people die, people get sick, and then Bill Marler, another lawyer on that side of the aisle, will represent those for actual injury. So now we're saying theoretical injury. Well, I bought this and I was deceived. This product is misbranded because I bought something that should have been better than it was, and I want a piece. Wow, wow.
yeah, it cuts against the do the right thing for the right reasons, right? Which is the primary motivator in these cases. So now we have to think about those other consequences, and unfortunately, insurance doesn't cover class action lawsuits. So we may have insurance for a recall, maybe, but not the lawsuits that will follow.
Mm. Yeah, I'm not even aware if anybody even would offer insurance policies for class action lawsuits. It's probably too early in it.
I don't think so. Yeah,
Mm,
unfortunately.
craziness. Um, So what are you seeing out there? One of the things that you and I, Sean, have talked about is what's the agency up to right now and different tactics and approaches. So of course, swabathons. We were all very familiar with swabathons, FDA going in, doing a massive environmental sampling in the facility. What type of things are you seeing? What's FDA been doing around that? I haven't heard a whole lot. Has there been any changes in tactics on that side with FDA?
Yeah, I'd say within the last 2 years, 2.5 years, the regulators are a couple things. Number one, when there is a recall because of, let's say, listeria contamination, it used to be we could do our root source analysis. We could figure out what the vehicle of contamination was. Let's say it was a conveyor belt on line 2, and we could pinpoint the contamination that occurred to that specific point in time, that line, and maybe we could justify with support and data that this product from this line, from this day, in this production period, this lot is all that's affected, right?
So
And the regulators would, yeah, we define it precisely, and the regulators would embrace that and say, okay, we in essence accept or won't challenge your assessment. What's changed in the last 3 years, 2.5 years, is the regulators are no longer, and I don't know if it's a new generation or different scientists at CIFSAN and USDA or just different evolution of policy, but they're no longer accepting that, which
mm,
is to say, we understand, and maybe it gets back to my point, you can put 250,000 cells of listeria on the tip of a paperclip, that when contamination exists, it exists, right? So you can't look at me and straight in the face and tell me that that bacteria was only contaminating product at that point on that line on that day. You need to prove to me that it didn't transfer to the adjacent line. You need to prove to me that the employee didn't carry the contamination across the production floor and affect an entirely different area. You need to prove to me that any other products that were shipped in those 4 walls during that period weren't also contaminated. And if you can't prove it to me, you're recalling everything.
Wow.
And that is a huge change. And it's the way I describe it is, so we're, imagine when you're a young kid, you're laying in bed, you got the sheets up, the blanket up to your chin. And now the USDA busts in the door and says, I know there's a boogeyman in this bedroom somewhere. And you say, no, there's not, or really. And they say, prove it to me. And I say, well, look under the bed. There's no boogeyman under the bed. And they look under the bed. There's nothing there. I say, okay, well, believe you. Prove to me there's not a boogeyman somewhere in this room. You say, well, okay, go open the closet. And they open the closet, and there's no boogeyman in the closet. There's just some shirts hanging. And you say, see, there's no boogeyman here. And they say, well, prove to me there isn't an invisible boogeyman in the closet. And that's what we're facing as industry. Like, prove to me that the rest of the product that you produced over the course of the last year isn't also contaminated. And we want you to recall everything. And it's these broad brushstrokes of just, I don't know, I think it's kind of a little bit out of control. The other thing that the agency is doing is now forcing companies to shut down, to stop their production on the heels of a recall. So if you do have a listeria event, they want you to shut down your line, stop producing product. In the past, we could continue to operate, and no longer, because the agency wants you to go after the boogeyman in the closet that actually might not be there. So the rules have changed, I think, significantly, and it's much more difficult for companies to operate in this environment. And on top of it, layered on top of it, is the insurance companies increasingly are looking for reasons to deny insurance claims. Yeah. So now if you have the government saying, well, gosh, your problem was so expansive, or you can't prove to us it wasn't, that we're going to make you recall 3 months worth of product. Oh, and by the way, we're going to make you shut down your facility. We can't necessarily force you, but we're telling you if you don't, you're going to get a warning letter or an FSA on the USDA side, and we're going to make life hell for you for the next year. What does the insurance company do? They look at that and they say, well, that's proof that you're guilty. You knew that you had an issue and you didn't do enough to stop it. So like all of the forces are combining, right, to put this pressure on food companies, let alone the criminal exposure you might have. So it's a risky business. I have had a few clients in higher risk commodities, which I advised many years ago. Now is the time to sell your company, and some of them have, and I've given them high fives.
Wow. So just so everybody's clear on this relative to this. So from a philosophy standpoint, what FDA is attempting to do is make you prove a negative, which is impossible. You cannot prove a negative. It can never be done. So that food plan is being put in an impossible situation. Now, part of this then too is the pressure it puts on you as a food safety professional. Is you're doing your environmental sampling, you're going out and doing this, and you think, let's say, for example, you think you have a positive, and you start some additional confirmational work to look at it. Oh, okay, everybody, false alarm. It was a false positive. We're okay. You're going to have to shut down during that period of time. You're going to have some really angry people in your company at you.
Right.
So, wow, that's bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's a lot of pressure now on, I think, business from a listeria control standpoint. And it kind of circles back to, I think at the appropriate levels, we need to have this conversation, which is there is a standard for controlling pathogens in the environment. Let there be no mistake, right? We have to have the right culture. We have to have the right attitude. We have to make sure our food is safe. But where is that zero tolerance line? And I think that's where the agency has to be more honest, and we have to have a open and frank debate about where that level of tolerance is. And I do think that there has to be a level of tolerance established so that, we don't have these sort of crazy examples where companies are really being raked across the coals undeservedly.
No, I agree. So one of the other interesting things, I did some research here this week on this as well, and I want to talk about this more in the future chats as well, is AI. And what FDA is doing, that they're playing around right now in the medical device and drug field and building out tools There's one I found called Warp Intelligent Learning Engine, and this is now coming to food. And this really gets into what we've been talking about, Shawn, around risk optimization, risk assessments, and how these things are being looked at. And fascinating things here going on with FDA. So FDA is looking out at the marketplace and saying, all right, where do I need to put my energy? What are the things I need to worry about the most? And generally, this has been a reactionary process from FDA. It's like, okay, which industries are the highest risk? Oh, ready to eat. Okay, things like this. Where are we getting the most recalls in the marketplace? Where are the consumers the most upset with us for? All right, we're going to use a lot of our energy here in the district to focus on those companies. Um, but FDA now has in place a risk scoring system for products and facilities. And these AI programs are going out there and they're targeting companies, 85% of high risk companies. So the AI is going out there now and telling FDA, here's where you need to be looking. What's your comments around that? Are you seeing it?
Yeah. I would say yes and no. Like on the one hand, AI, I think is that's a philosophical debate too, which is to say, are we along the path of creating the ultimate entity, human being that isn't a human, right? Where we're just a tool to create something that's even better and more brilliant and smarter than the rest of us. That ultimately was the universe's plan. But yes, we're on this path of AI, artificial intelligence. It is a fabulous tool. I think it can play a significant role in food safety. If you think at the minute level, the micro level, just think about a sensor on a machine that can detect the slightest change in vibration, which suggests maybe there is something amiss that could lead to maybe some metal shavings ending up in a product, right? Brilliant. We need it. And I think it can make the food industry that much more safe. But it also at the same time can be abused. So, if we think about, should we leverage, I guess we have to think about this also. This is a really philosophical debate this morning, I'll just say.
Yeah.
But, if you think about cancer research, do we want to leverage AI to help us solve get rid of the causes of cancer and help us find a solution? Yeah, absolutely. I don't think anybody would say no. So should we use it to make our food process more safe and identify where those risk areas are and go after them? Absolutely. I think we need to just be careful that we're employing it in the right way so that we're not, we talk about constitutional rights, right? And due process and all those things, that we're not abusing those rights. So I think I'm for it, but I just want to make sure if it is used, it's used in the right way.
Yeah, it reminds me. You remember that Tom Cruise movie, Minority Report, where they use those precogs to predict what crimes are going to happen in the future. It's kind of what it is. It's like, hi, we're FDA and we're here at your plant. Well, what's up? Do we have customer complaints or things? No, it's just that our model predicted that you're likely to have an issue in the future, so we're here to prevent that from happening. Whoa.
Yeah. And if anybody thinks that the FDA is on your side, I'll just point to the examples where following an inspection, the inspector will go back to his or her home office, sit down in front of their computer, author a 2 or 3 page affidavit, put the name of the plant manager on it, and shove it in their face the next morning at the conclusion of the inspection and tell them to sign it as if they authored it themselves. Oh, and they'll misspell things in it so that when the person reads it and corrects it, they can say they actually reviewed it. That's the dark side of the regulators who are, breathing down companies' necks. Yes, they serve a very important public health function, but nobody's innocent at the end of the day.
Yeah. One of the advice I always gave my quality team and my quality managers is FDA, first and foremost, is a political entity. They're not a scientific entity, and they look at things through that lens. And you need to recognize that it is what it is.
Yeah, that is true.
You need to be careful.
So we have to embrace the good, but also make sure that we're always at the same time being honest.
Yeah, and the bottom line here is that food companies are the tip of the spear on this. We're the people that are producing safe food. It's our responsibility. You can't delegate that. FDA is there kind of, you hate the analogy, but they're like the cop. But we're responsible and we need to figure these things out, which is why we have these conversations. So as you're sitting down with your clients, John, and you're giving them this information and you're sitting with the CEO, then they come back to you and say, "Oh my God, John, class action lawsuits, what we're doing what do we do? What do we do as a company? What type of advice are you giving them?"
Sell. No. um, I think the silver lining and the bright spot on the horizon is, and I truly believe this, is culture.
Mhm.
That people like yourself, who have been in the industry for a long time and embrace not only the challenges but the accomplishments that the industry has made, and can realistically recognize the areas where we can truthfully and honestly improve, and
Mhm.
to push that, to continue to communicate, and have that steady mantra, so that the young people, the young professionals who are coming up in this industry, and this, I think this proves true for the regulators as well, we all kind of view food safety through the same lens, which
Yeah.
is, if we have that culture in place, we're more likely to make the right decisions, to make the right investments, to recognize when companies are actually trying to do their best, to not penalize them, but to reward them, even if they do stumble on their feet. Where we're moving forward as an industry collectively, trying to get better. And looking back over the course of the last number of decades, I do think that is the trend we're on as an industry, which is, and I think even with respect to the regulators, 15 years ago, you may recall, you wouldn't get regulators and industry in the same room on a panel speaking together.
Yeah.
Now that's routine, right? So one of the things I've been trying to push too is this collaboration between industry and the regulators, so that we can grow together, that we can get better together. And I do think that is a silver lining, that we may be kind of taking a path like this, but we are trending ultimately in the right direction, if
Yeah.
that makes
No, I
sense.
agree. Well, and I think that's the way things are going, especially with risk optimization and companies looking at this holistically. When you look at a product category, so dairy, produce, whatever, um, in any given industry sector, there's mature companies, there's startups, there's entrepreneurs who have no idea what they're doing. They just got a really cool product idea that they think is awesome. You have different levels of expertise, and you have good players and bad players. Every now and then, we'll see a recall that pops up. There was one that happened in Florida a couple of years ago with ice cream, listeria, proven right in the ice cream, tested. CEO is like, nope, we're not recalling. Right? Those people need to be removed from the food business.
Yeah.
Clearly, that CEO doesn't understand risk and doesn't understand the implications of what they're doing. No, go away. You shouldn't be doing what you're doing. Go sell auto parts or something that's going to be less risk. And
Used car.
I think we're evolving to this status now, and we use this term food safety culture. Right? It's kind of this abstract term. Really, that's what we're talking about. Is how do we evaluate these companies and their understanding of these risk equations, and that's at the senior level. And as we talked about before here on the chat, just because you're a good CEO doesn't mean you're a good food CEO. The skill set of learning how to run a company is pretty much ubiquitous. If you're a good CEO, you can run an automotive company, a razor company, da da da.
So
But
true. Yep.
when you get to food, now the rules change.
Mhm.
Your earnings per share, your stock valuation, your growth potential, your shelf velocity, yeah, all important things. But food adds an extra equation to that. And if the executives don't understand that, they're going to make bad decisions.
Yes, absolutely. And I do agree with you that the stresses and the pinch points and the challenges and the exposures in the food industry are so much different than the rest of the industry in general. And I think it comes down to what's actually, I would say, what's more important than pharmaceuticals, or almost as important, I'd say what is more important than pharmaceuticals is the food that we put in our bodies so we can survive.
Yes.
And guess what? There's no need for Tylenol if you starve to death. So food is so important. We're intimate with food. We put it in our bodies. And if we're going to lead a corporation or an organization that makes the food that we put in our bodies, we need to be at a higher level of not only culture but understanding and expertise to lead an organization that is literally responsible for the health of the world.
Yeah. And a and I think this is where the chats and why I enjoy doing these so much is we're in a continuous learning environment in what we do, which is great because there's always a new challenge. There's always a new thing to think about. And I think today, Shawn, you're on the cutting edge of that. You're one of those people that are out there showing us what we need to be thinking about. And so thank you for that. And sometimes we don't like it, right? This whole class action lawsuit, it's like, oh, Christ, but just you can't ignore it. You have to be aware of it. And part of this is in food companies, food safety and quality. In a lot of ways, we're the herald. We're the group that needs to bring this type of information to the attention of senior leadership. Because if you have a good company, your senior leadership team is thinking about the business and thinking 3 to 5 years out and saying, all right, where do we want to be? Where do we want to go? We have in our roles the day-to-day blocking and tackling needs to take place, but we need to be thinking with that mindset as well and helping our leadership in a food safety business and a food business understand these things. But to your point, food is so ubiquitous that it just fades into the background. We just all assume that it's okay. And it's constant effort as we talk about here on the chat.
Yes, for sure. Yes, for sure. But what a great profession to be in, that we have the opportunity to have these very deep and I think very important conversations so that we ultimately all get better together.
Right. And that's where we all have this commonality in that we do what we do because there's a moral aspect to it. We're looking at things as they're good or bad, right or wrong, pass or fail, in service of that, because we're all in the same boat. By the way, guys, I haven't pulled up any comments here on the chats, but I'm really enjoying the comments. I am reading them, and I always love it when I see a new person with a new perspective. So, Jackie, thank you. So it appears, Jackie, that you work in kind of the healthcare field or something outside of this normally, and I love what you're writing in here relative to that crossover on an outsider to this industry and that transparency and that stakeholder. It applies to everybody. And so with these comments, guys, look back through those as well too, because this is part of that cross pollination of how we're learning on these type of things as well. So as we close out our chat here for today, Shawn, anything that you got going out there? What's your next big appearance? What do you got going on out there?
Oh, well, thanks for asking. Actually, we have in a month and a half, early December, the Next Level Summits Food Safety Symposium, which is going to be held in San Antonio. I'm going on actually my 15th year of chairing that event. Day one, presuming the government isn't still shut down, we're going to have a panel of FDA, USDA, and CDC, which I'll moderate. And then through the course of the event, we'll introduce speakers and provide my own commentary. Jess and I are actually doing a mock trial during that event. So that'll be a lot of fun. So NLS, if you have a chance and can make it, we'd love to have you join us at that conference. Great conference. That's kind of it. We hit the conference circuit pretty hard in the fall, as things get kind of crazy busy. I mentioned we were in DC for a quick talk. Was able to hang out at the wharf in DC. Absolutely fabulous if you get a chance. Definitely worth it. So yeah, it's been a good fall, and looking forward to continuing these conversations because they're so important. And I think I would say, just kind of in, broadly speaking, I think the most impressive I have been with the regulators is, and I think they hit it out of the park with on the heels of FSMA passing, and the mantra from the agency, which was in the early years, we are going to educate
Before regulate.
before we regulate. And the regulators were learning just as much from industry. Being in food facility, yeah, think about it. FDA inspector doesn't know anything about how cookies are made, perhaps,
No.
or how salads, deli salads are made. They're running into these facilities and issuing judgments and making conclusions about an industry that they really don't know a whole lot about. And that was a time in our history where the regulators were really stepping back and just learning and teaching, and industry was learning. And wow, we accomplished a lot in that period where the collaboration and the cooperation was at its, I think, highest mark. So I would, moving forward, I would say if we can see USDA and FDA continue to embrace that, we're here to educate. Yes, we will regulate and make sure your food is safe, but we're here to educate as well and learn from you.
Good.
We'll all be better off.
Nice summary. Very well said. So as always, Shawn, I love having you on the chat. Thanks for taking the time out to join us. And thank you, everybody. Right? An hour of your work week is a huge commitment, and we recognize that and celebrate you as well for taking the time to elevate your food safety knowledge and share this information that Shawn has as well, right? Spread it out there. Make sure it's seen. Thank you again to our sponsor, Culture Advisory Group. Great guys over there. And as you'll notice, if you're regular on the chat, I keep talking about risk a lot, right? This is the next elevation of how we need to be looking at food safety in food companies. Audits are not enough. Audits are needed, but it's not enough. So if you want to learn more about that, reach out to me and let's start talking about it. It's coming. It's coming for sure. So thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Enjoy your weekend. Hopefully you have a beautiful fall weather wherever you're at. I know it's great here. Get out and enjoy yourself. To Shawn's point, you have to have a balance, right? So don't let food safety completely consume your life. It's important, but you have a life to live too. So we will see you back here next Friday at the same time, 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern on LinkedIn and YouTube, where I'll have another amazing guest like Shawn on the chat, and we'll have a conversation. So we will see you then. Thanks a lot, Shawn. Oh,
Bryan, thanks for all you do.
You bet. Glad to do it. See you, everybody.